Hey there, Coach Nrgy here, the Single Parents Life Coach. Today we're talking about closure. There are a lot of people who do not believe that closure is a thing, that closure is a real thing, and that it can actually be attained. So I want to talk about it and just kind of give different outlooks on it, different points about it, different ways of how closure is given, or if it's not given, how can you create or give yourself closure about a situation or about a relationship. So make sure that you stay tuned. We're going to talk about it right now. It's all about accepting what has happened and accepting where things have ended with you and someone else, with you and your ex, with you and a friend, whether it's an intimate relationship or a platonic relationship. Closure is accepting where things are, where things have been left, and where things have ended and how things have ended. Closure is not necessarily closure is not going to always feel good. I can definitely tell you that. Closure is not going to always feel good. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. It really just depends on the details of what happened. However, with closure, the focus and the main goal is to get yourself in a situation or put yourself in a situation where you are able to let go and move on. Move forward from that person, move forward from your ex, move forward from that friend that you were in that relationship with or in a situation with, and just let it go in order to just keep life moving and not to stay stuck in a situation of where it's just like, oh my goodness, there are so many questions that are not being answered, or there are so many questions that are unanswered, and because you don't have the answers to those particular questions, it's not allowing you to officially move on. It's not allowing you to officially just let it go and move on and look forward versus looking in the past. It's not allowing you to no longer live in the past. So with closure, it's about having clarity of a situation. Again, it's about having clarity of a situation. Now, whether that person, the other person that was involved in a situation or the relationship with you, whether or not they create the clarity or help clarify things for you, or if it's just something that you have to do for yourself. So I will talk about both instances. The instance of where someone, the other person, your ex or whatever, will engage in creating the clarity for you, versus when your ex or that person is just out. Like, they're not answering any questions, they're no longer engaging with you, they're no longer entertaining anything that you have to ask or anything that you have to say. And that happens quite a bit. So there are a lot of people who, if you don't know how to create closure for yourself, there are a lot of people who are still stuck in past relationships, who are still stuck in just living in their past and stuck in those old feelings, those old painful moments, aka the emotional baggage that people carry around. Typically, that emotional baggage is often due to there not having been closure to a relationship or a situation. So closure often happens whenever a person does not gain closure or does not have closure over a situation. Typically, it's because there is an unexpected breakup, a breakup that just caught them off guard. And I'll explain why I'm doing the air quotes. A situation that may have caught them off guard, something that they may not have expected, something that they just did not see coming. So a lot of people, you have to ask yourself, was it really unexpected? There are so many relationships where people attempt to fix or resolve issues that need to be talked about, need to be communicated about, need to be resolved or worked on in order to maintain that relationship or that friendship with moving forward in order to just maintain it, period. Keep the life in that relationship, or keep the life in that friendship. And there are so many people who just miss all of the conversations, miss all the clues, miss all of the signs, or who don't take the other person seriously. Or who will say, okay, yes, I hear you. Yes, I'll fix it. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'll do this. I'll do that. And they never do. They never make the changes that they've promised to make. They never make the adjustments that they promised to make. They never stop doing certain things that are harming the relationship. They never stop doing it, even if they said that they would. And so at some point, a person will just throw their hands up and say, you know what, enough is enough, and I'm out. And so that's a common way of how breakups are unexpected. It's because of during the relationship, when one person was attempting to have the conversation, when one person was attempting to seek help, offering, hey, let's go to a therapist, or let's go to a counselor, let's see a relationship coach, let's work on these things, let's talk about it, let's set some time to the side on this particular day for just us. Maybe maybe they're saying, this person is too busy. Maybe this other person doesn't have enough time for them, aren't giving them enough time or enough attention, or are not loving them the way that they want to be loved or the way that they need to be loved. Perhaps, I don't know, it's just so many different situations, so many different obstacles that people tend to go through in relationships. And more times than not, it's usually one-sided, in the sense of one person sees where the relationship is not headed down a good path, and so they attempt to communicate about it. They attempt to implement strategies. They attempt to implement change, or they scream about it. They fuss about it, whatever it may look like or sound like based off of that particular individual. Whether they fuss about it, whether they fight about it, whether they are screaming or crying or nagging. If it may sound or seem like a person is nagging, that's that person trying to reach out to the other person in the relationship for help, like saying, hey, we have an issue. Red flags are starting to pop up in our relationship. We have an issue, and we need to pay attention to this thing. We need to pay attention to our relationship. We need to focus on it, instead of just being in, what do you call it? Not neutral, but being in, what's that thing? Cruise control. Yeah. Sorry, my bad. It's been so long since I've really driven anywhere because of this whole pandemic that's going on. But anyway, yeah, I haven't had to use my cruise control in so long. So pardon me with that. But yeah, so when relationships are in cruise control, one partner typically sees how things are going and aren't really happy about it. And most, not all, will try to fix it, will try to resolve it, will try to bring it up and bring it to the attention of the other person, to where they can do something about it before it's too late, before that unexpected breakup happens. So with that, you have to know yourself. In addition to knowing the other person, you have to know yourself. If you have been caught in a situation and you're the person on the receiving end of a breakup, whether expected or unexpected, you have to at some point know yourself enough and be honest with yourself and figure out or think about, hey, what made all of this happen? When did things start to turn left? Things were going fine up until what point? And when you're able to figure that out within that timeline, then ask yourself, okay, what parts did I play in it? What part did I contribute to the going left? And then what parts did I contribute to trying to get us back on the right path and getting us back with moving forward and making progress? So taking responsibility for yourself and for your actions is a huge part of the closure aspect. The reason I say that is because there are too many people, so many people who, when it comes to a relationship ending, they tend to blame it on the other person if they don't have closure over the situation. They're blaming, just like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what happened. This just came out of the blue, nothing. I didn't see this coming. But really, like, you have to really think about it and take responsibility for your actions of what part did you play in the relationship? What part did you play in things going left? And I'm not saying it in a sense of everything is your fault, everything is on you. However, if the breakup was unexpected and if you totally just got caught off guard, there was something that you were missing. You were not focused, you were not alert, you were not being aware, you were not actually present in the reality of the relationship. You may have been present, but maybe in your own made up, realistic, your own made up story about how things were going, about how happy your partner was or how happy you may have been, versus really paying attention and focusing on the reality of what's really going on and taking responsibility for your actions. I have to say that because there are so many people who go throughout relationships where they avoid what can seem as conflict. But all conflict is not bad. There may be a difference in opinion, there may be disagreements going on. However, conflict doesn't have to be blown out of proportion. Conflict doesn't have to be physical. Conflict doesn't have to be a big negative thing if it's handled properly, if it's handled from the onset of the issues. So because there are so many people who just totally avoid the issues that are popping up in their relationships and do things to try to put a band-aid on it, do things to try to cover up the issues, do things to where it's not being realistic or realistically handled, those typically are the people who end up in breakups that were unexpected and end up in situations where closure is just not given. It's not given from the other person. So going back to where I said you have to know yourself and be honest with yourself. If you're someone who has the notion of, closure is not a real thing, or closure, your ex or past friend or ex-friend or ex-partner did not give you closure, and if you feel that they are obligated to give you that closure, think about, are you that person who has avoided the issues in the relationship? Think about, what actions did you play when it came time to talk, when it came time to simply have those conversations that may or may not be tough, when it comes time to changing things, with making those adjustments that are to improve the relationship or to improve the friendship? Were you a willing participant in making those changes? And not just verbally agreeing to making those changes or just verbally saying, okay, yes, I'm sorry, I see what happened, blah, 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 but then never actually doing anything about it? Were you that type of person that never actually put in the work? You never really put in the work. You never really put in what was necessary to fix the issues of whatever those issues were that were popping up. If you're able to be honest with yourself about that and ask yourself that question, you'll start to see where, wow, okay, that breakup wasn't really unexpected, because my ex-partner, they brought this up to me. They brought this particular issue up to me quite a bit, or they tried to talk to me about it, or they asked if I would be willing to go do this or spend more time together or whatever. And I never did it. So if you're honest with yourself, do you fit in any of those categories? If you're a person, again, about closure, you were in a relationship, whether far back in your past or something more recent, where closure was just not given to you and you're having a hard time with moving on, you're having a hard time with knowing the why behind your ex leaving, figure that out. Think about it. You have to take responsibility over your actions. You have to You have to see what part you played or what parts you did not play that should have had action behind him. So, because those are just too common. I see that a lot. I hear that a lot from clients, from just conversations that I have with people, from people that I mentor, where after we kind of go through, after I ask those hard questions that they may have avoided within that relationship, but whenever someone is communicating with me about it and I'm actually asking the questions and expecting an answer or a response back that they've avoided throughout their relationship or for all of that time, once we really start to dig in, that's when the light starts to get a little bit brighter within that person's mind or thoughts of, wow, now I get it, or it's starting to make sense, or now I can see where it really wasn't unexpected. Like my ex, this is speaking in terms of a client. My ex was trying to tell me this. My ex was trying to get me to make this change or make this adjustment. I did tell my ex that I would do this or do that, or I would stop doing this or I would stop doing that. And I never did. So that's where they're able to start that process of creating the closure or giving themselves closure, because it's starting to make sense. Now they are putting themselves in their ex's shoes, so to speak, and starting to get an understanding of why, of where it all came crashing down. So you got to do some soul searching. That's another thing, when it comes to gaining closure or creating closure for yourself. If your ex is not a willing participant anymore in engaging in conversation with you now that the breakup has happened, you will have to do some soul searching. You will have to get in tune to your spirit to really figure out why were you not present, like mentally present, emotionally present, spiritually present in that relationship that you were physically present in. Do some soul searching and get in tune with your spirit to figure that answer out. And then to see, is that a habit of yours? Is it a pattern? Is it the first time that it's happened in your most, in whatever that relationship was of where closure was not given? Have you done that before in multiple relationships or other relationships? So that's part of the soul searching that you'll have to do. And you'll really have to just shine that flashlight on yourself and have you take a good look at yourself to see who are you? Who you really are. Find out who you really are. And part of that is to do a self-check. You have to check yourself. Always, always, always. You have to do a self-check on your actions. You have to do a self-check on your morals and your moral guide. What's guiding you through life? What guides you through relationships? What's guiding you to make the decisions that you make when you are involved with someone? What's guiding you on your path or your journey of love? Do a self-check with that and figure that out. You have to learn in addition to learning your morals, you have to learn your values, understand what your values are. What are those things in life that you value? And do your values line up with your actions? Do your values line up with the words that you say? Do your values line up with how you treat people? Do your values line up with how you treated your ex, the one who has left? And I say it all the time, there are a lot of things that I talk about here on my channel where it is considered a big pill to swallow. Because here, when communicating with me or anything that I put out here on these different platforms, or just in conversations in general that I'm having with different people, no change will actually be made if we never deal with the real thing. So no change will actually be made within a person or for a person if they never actually deal with the real thing. the real issue. So that's what I deal with here. Another thing that a person has to self-check is their style or their level of communication within that relationship where that person broke up with them and closure has not been received. Were you someone who communicated openly, transparently, wholeheartedly, and truthfully and honestly? Were you someone who was being 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 open? There's no, I use all of the terms that I can think of: open, honest, transparent, truthfully. In that relationship, were you someone who actually did effective did communicate effectively? Or again, were you just kind of talking about non-important things, superficial things? Were you avoiding conversations? Did you avoid certain topics? Did you avoid certain subjects? Were you distracted during conversations that maybe your ex was trying to have? Things like that. That's a huge self-check that a lot of people have to do. So there are many situations where an ex friend or an ex relationship, lover, whatever, of an intimate relationship, where they simply just will not give you closure. They are not going to entertain you. They're not going to engage in anything that you have to say, in any further conversations that you may be trying to have, especially once they have officially said that the relationship is over, that the relationship is done. But what I want to say about that is that person who does not give necessarily, who does not technically give you the closure, the person who actually left, your ex, it doesn't mean that they are a bad person just because they're not giving you closure. That's a huge thing that people try to label the one who was on the receiving end of the breakup. That's a huge thing that they try to label on the person who made the decision to end the relationship. It doesn't mean that they are a bad person. Again, a lot of the what you're seeking as needing foreclosure has been communicated to you throughout the relationship a lot of the times. A lot of the times, your ex who decided to say, you know what, I'm done, this is over, a lot of the times they have attempted to communicate with you the issues that would cause or that would be the demise of the relationship. So by the time that they have reached the level of or the point of, okay, you know what, I'm done, and they just walk away from the relationship, it's probably because they're not wanting to repeat themselves again with nothing happening, with nothing to follow, repeating themselves to just an empty vessel, an empty bucket, an empty container, and nothing happening, which is which is wasting time, wasting energy, seeing your life just kind of tick 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 by you, and nothing is happening. This particular person is not wanting to, they're not hearing you, they're not willing to step up to the plate, do their part in making whatever changes are necessary in order for you guys to still have stayed together. So by the time the relationship is over, and if this person does not give you closure, if your ex does not give you closure, it is 9 times out of 10 because they are over it. They are over the fact, they are over trying to get you to see what they're trying to show you, hear what they're trying to tell you, get you to take action on something that they're trying to do with you. And it's like, okay, fine. You weren't hearing them, so they heard you. You weren't hearing them and they're crying out for help, whatever that looks like. You weren't hearing them and you weren't engaging or entertaining in their requests. And so because of that, they ultimately decided to engage and entertain in your indirect or nonverbal way of requesting that, hey, like, I'm not that this issue that you're trying to talk about is not important enough for me to do anything about it. It's not enough for me to talk about it. It's not important enough for me to stop it or to start it, whatever it is. So it's like, okay, I'll back off. So that person, your ex, decides to back off. You cannot be mad at them. You can't be mad now that they no longer have anything else to say to you, anything else to say to the conversation. And I know that that can be really, really, really hard to hear. But I don't even want to say but. I know that that can be really, really, really hard to hear. And those are the cards that you dealt to your ex. You've given them the hand and they played their hand. So you cannot be mad at them. And so at that point, you're left to do what? Now, figure out how to give closure to yourself about that situation. So how does that work? A lot of people will say, well, how do I give myself closure about a situation that somebody else made a decision on? You will have to do that soul searching. Giving closure to yourself will require you to put yourself in their shoes and just kind of go back throughout the relationship and figure out, okay, I remember them talking about this. I remember this particular argument. I remember when we had this disagreement. I remember when they asked me to do this, or I remember when they asked me to stop doing this. And then being honest with yourself and seeing, okay, but what did I do in response? When my ex asked me to do this, what did I do? When my ex asked me to start doing this, what did I do? And then just kind of go through those motions and really figure it out. You will have to go through the part or the kind of replaying your relationship to yourself and giving yourself closure. But the only way you're going to give yourself closure is if you are honest with yourself. If you're honest with yourself about what part you played in the relationship. If you're honest with yourself about the things that actually happen, about the facts, about the realistic, I'm going to say that word again, the realistic parts throughout the relationship, the things that actually did happen, not what you've made up. There are a lot of people in relationships who will make up things that absolutely did not happen. They will make up this total false sense of falsehood of stuff. They will make up a false persona and expect someone else to play into that in real life. So that's how you start to get closure. That's part of the process. The process is basically going back, backtracking the things of what happened when a person, because 9 times out of 10, that person was telling you. That person talked to you about it or attempted to talk to you about it. They brought it up. It may have been that thing that possibly caused arguments or whatever. So something for you to actually do. So that's work that you're going to have to do. And if you want to give closure to yourself about the situation, and it's important for you to have closure over a situation, whether you get it from the other person or not, it's something that is really important to have, because it keeps you from staying in this past relationship. It keeps you from having that chip on your shoulder. It keeps you from adding this relationship into this luggage of baggage, or into this baggage that you're just adding year after year, and you're carrying it with you throughout life. So it's so important for you to somehow figure out a way to gain closure. Gain closure over each relationship, gain closure over every situation that you have, in order to move on successfully, and in order to just not stay tied down to the idea of your ex is a bad person because they broke up with you, and because you don't think you know why. But in reality, in most situations, people know why. Even those who were close to you guys in your relationship know why. Because at some point, someone may have discussed it with a friend, family member, or whatever, and they probably saw the writing on the wall. But why didn't you? So that's part of the questions that you'll have to answer whenever you are giving yourself closure or trying to find a way to create closure about a relationship or about a situation. But let's just say if someone is willing to give you closure, an ex is willing to help assist in creating that closure over your guys' situation. How does that look? Basically, that person will stay in communication with you for a short period of time and help answer the questions that you may have about why things have broken up. They will continue to entertain you for, again, however long that they choose. There is no certain specific amount of time that it's a one size fits all type of thing. No, every situation is going to be different. Every relationship is going to be different. So that timing will be different as well for everyone. However, it will just simply be if you have questions like, okay, well, but why? Why now? Well, what happened about this? Well, I thought you said we would be together forever. So, whatever the questions are that you may have, whatever they look like, that person who's willing to help create a sense of closure for you, they will communicate with you. They'll talk to you about it. They'll answer your questions to the best of their ability to explain to you why, to explain to you what happened, to explain to you what was that final straw that broke the camel's back. So that's how someone will give closure to someone else. So it is possible. It definitely happens. But I do want to make sure that I reiterate the fact that if someone doesn't give you closure, it does not necessarily mean that they are a bad person. Like, no, some people just finally say enough is enough, and some people will just move on with their life because they weren't getting what they have been asking for. They weren't getting what they needed in order to stay in a particular relationship. So it does not mean that they are a bad person if someone just totally just walks away, because 9 times out of 10, if it seems as if they just walked away, there was something that has been happening for a while, and it was a buildup of stuff that they just could not get the other person to participate in helping the situation, helping improve the situation, improving the relationship. So at some point, they just had to do what was best for them. And you cannot be mad at a person for that, because we all have to make sure that we take care of ourselves first in order to be the best version of ourselves that we can be when in a relationship. And so if a relationship or a person is not serving you, then you have every right to leave. You have every right to say, you know what, let me walk away, because this is a waste of time. This is a waste of my life. This is a waste of your time. And we're not going to get this resolved. It's not working out. We've either tried or we did not try because of someone not wanting to participate in what it would take to try. And that's it. It's okay for someone to end a relationship and move on and to walk away. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. So when people can understand that simple concept or that simple thought, not every relationship that you're going to be in is meant to be your forever relationship anyway. So to be angry or pissed off or upset at a person who walked away without giving you closure, that makes no sense. Because if they were meant to be in your life, if they were meant to be your forever person, then they would be there. You never know. That person may come back later. Come back later in a year, in 10 years. You never know. Maybe some time apart will be the thing that helps you guys. But if they walk away, then it's because you were not for them and they were not for you. And you just have to simply accept that. Accept that as being one of those things in life of what life is just all about. So if all else fails, just always remember, if a person doesn't give you that sense of closure, give it to yourself. Give it to yourself by going through the motions. And a lot of people, I'm saying that to those who will actually do the work, who will actually go through the process, who will actually go through what may be painful. But if you're a person who will avoid giving yourself the closure by trying to figure out, okay, where did things go wrong? Where did things go left? If you're that type of person, then that's what coaches are for. Life coaches, therapists, counselors, whatever. That's what people like myself are here for. We are here to help coach you and guide you through different scenarios or different life issues, life situations. And if you're not strong enough to just push through what will be painful, what may be embarrassing, then hire someone to do that with you. Hire someone to go through the motions with you. Hire someone to help you figure out how to create that closure properly for yourself. Because you don't want to be with someone who really doesn't know what they're doing and will lead you down a road of more emotional damage. So hire you a coach, a life coach, a relationship coach, such as myself, to help guide you through the process of creating that closure for yourself and just understanding relationships better. Ultimately, that's what it is. That's one of the things that I constantly talk to my clients about, talk to people that I mentor about, is if you are able to just simply gain a clear understanding of just how relationships work in general, then you will be, a lot of the stuff that happens throughout relationships, throughout the course of your life, you will be able to handle and you will be able to deal with them way more effectively. So, because when you understand relationships, you understand how they work, then when certain things happen, you get it. You already have an idea of like, okay, yeah, I can understand why that would have happened. And that right there is half the battle. So, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Closure. And yes, closure is a real thing. If you are in need of understanding closure, understanding relationships, trying to figure out how do you get closure? How can you give someone closure? If you are someone who is willing to give someone closure, then reach out to me. Go to my website, CoachNrgy.com. Nrgy is spelled Nrgy, CoachNrgy.com, and click on that consultation button. It is a free 30-minute consultation for you and I to discuss things. Let's figure out a game plan. Let's figure out what else can you use a life coach for? What other situations are going on in your life? If you are ready to move forward from being stuck to an ex, from being stuck to a past relationship, and you're like, you know what, I just really want to clear my mind of this person and of this situation and this breakup, and I want to get my life back and start moving forward. Call me, contact me. Don't call me, you don't have my number. Contact me, go to that website and schedule an appointment. Create an appointment by clicking on the free consultation button. You can also, if you're listening to this on the podcast, call I Give Life to Life, that podcast channel. Then make sure that you look at my email in the show notes. There, I did put my email down there. Or you can just simply comment directly on that particular podcast and I will get that notification. If you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and put your comments below or DM me directly. Well, direct message me, DM me, and we'll talk about it. We'll figure out what to do, what steps would be the best for you to take next. Thank you so much for sharing this content, for constantly supporting this channel, for getting the conversation started below as well as out in your families, out in your communities, because that's what it's all about. It's all about improving situations, improving relationships, improving you as an individual overall. So go ahead and give this a thumbs up if you did like this information, if you did like this channel. Let's see, give it a 5-star rating also if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts. I keep saying iTunes. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give this a 5-star rating and leave a pretty good review below if you don't mind. But I thank you guys so much. This is Coach Nrgy, the Single Parents Life Coach, and you already know what to do. Keep smiling. Bye.